So today, we turn the boat over and start working on the top side. I got some work done there before. You might have seen it in previous videos. I want to get the top all done, fiberglassed, sanded and smooth, and then I can start thinking about color schemes and paint. The bottom came out real good. Has a few things to work on. If you watched the last video, you can see there's a few little touch-up spots, but came out beautiful otherwise. So I'm gonna turn it over. It's gonna balance differently on the bottom, so I'm gonna have to stuff some towels underneath it. If this was a bigger boat, I'd have to build a cradle of some kind for it. But these are pretty easy to work on. Close to the fire at that end down there. So I'm just going to do a walking review. If you've watched the previous videos, you probably already know what's going on, but I'm just going to refresh for anybody who's just watching one for the first time. I use that fiberglass right here, which is different than the braided stuff. It's not as strong, but it's much easier to work with. And you can push it out and make shapes, and I'm really going to need that on here because I have to cut around all these openings, and I have to make it over the curves. The other stuff is easy to curve too, actually. On this, it wouldn't be too bad, but it's much harder to smooth it than this. This has already been sanded down here. With a little bit more work, it would already be ready to paint. I started this some time back. Ow! And I did what I tell you guys not to do. Oh man, is to rub your hand across bare fiberglass. Just gave myself. So funny, the smallest thing in the world can hurt worse than some big things you do. You see, it has a nice curve to it right here. It's got a belly on it. I got to cut shapes around all of this and get it fiberglassed. And once the whole deck is done, I'll sand it down. I put this on here just for my own, give myself hope that I actually can do a nice job on the rest of this. It's going to look like that when it's all done on the top side. I think I'm going to paint the top white, although I'm not sure yet, because when you're rowing out in the water, you can get a lot of glare in your eyes. So we'll see what I come up with. This would be, that's the rear, the stern. This is where most of the glare would come from, so maybe I could do something in here, but we'll see. But the mission is to get this fiberglass. I'm not going to bore you too much with it because the other videos are full of that kind of thing and descriptions, but I will go over one more thing for anyone new tuning in. I'm using polyester resin with that material I just showed you. And the finish resin right here, you put that on. I have to use that to basically glue the fiberglass down and get it attached properly all the way across it and soaked. And then you sand that, and then you do a finish coat of this material here, which kind of melts the bumps out of it, the best I can tell. I haven't done the research to find out how it works, but that's what it seems to do. It takes a rough surface and just sort of melts it flat, and then you sand it and you get a nice surface on it, if you do it right. I had some problems on the bottom. I think I might have used too much or too little hardener here and there. So that's going to be the process for the next few days. I'll keep you informed as I go along. I wanted to give you a bird's eye view of my ultra professional setup here for dealing with this material. You will need some kind of roller to set this on, some way to play with it. You don't want it laying down and having to pull it out because the fibers get stuck in things. It will grab hold of the wood if you have it on there. But you don't need to buy all kinds of fancy equipment to do it with. As you can see, I've got mine mounted on some old galvanized pipe I pulled out of a building a few years back, and some pipe hangers that it was hanging off of. Got a bunch of that stuff. It was a big job. And a deck. You see, this thing's made out of pallets. They're odd shaped pallets. But it just turned out they're the same height as my table saw, which is great. And I've turned it into a router table and a cutting table and sanding. I do all kinds of assembly work on it. It's great. And here's my fancy light for the table saw and the bench when I'm doing fine work. That's a range hood that I pulled out of a house. People didn't want it anymore, so I took it home. Has a fan in it and has the filter right there. Pulls the sawdust up and filters it out. I just made some legs for it. Screwed it into the sides and bada bing. Power on the side. Costs almost nothing to make all this stuff, really. Just some of my time. This is where I'm going to cut the fiberglass for the boat, right over there. So I'll get back to it. So I've got my pieces cut here. It took a lot more work to get around these holes than I thought. It's a bit irregular underneath there because of the original construction of the boat. And some interesting shapes here. You can see that. Although on the outside it comes down straight. So I had to trim it differently than it looked. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces to do. And that will probably be enough aggravation for one day. So wish me luck. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So I decided to do the entire top of the thing in one day. I wasn't going to, but I kind of just wanted it over with. So tomorrow I can come in and coat it with the other resin and melt it flat. It came out really good. And I think it's because I changed my technique, whereas the bottom, I applied the material with paintbrushes. It tended to pick up too much of the fibers and lift them and made a bumpy surface. So today, what I used was one of these, those guys there that you put Bondo on with. Same size for the whole thing. I was able to go slow and be very careful and smooth it all out. So I think this side here, fortunately, will need a whole lot less sanding than the bottom did. I sure hope so. I would really like to see this thing all painted with white epoxy paint by the end of the week. That would be awesome. But we'll see. That's what it looks like right now. I'm gonna leave it there and we'll come back to it tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Getting dark.